Houston Cougars, a furious comeback to knock off Duke and advance to the national championship game.
Here is Zion Chris, big hole, open sesame. Zion Chris, wow, the 72-yard house call.
Stick it in your pipe and smoke it, baby. Yes!
Welcome to the Scott Holm Podcast, back here late on a Tuesday night immediately after your Houston Cougar men's basketball team defeated the West Virginia Mountaineers as part of a 3-0 week that the more I thought about, Bobby, the more it kind of came to me how routine this week seemed. And that is the good thing about, I think, Kelvin Sampson and what he's done with that program. That's the goal, is to have these weeks be routine. And that's how you sustain that kind of excellence, to have that kind of mental approach to it, if that makes sense. But we're fans here. We call as we see it here, but Bobby and I are unabashed about our love of the Houston Cougars, our alma mater of both of us sitting here in front of microphones tonight. We can appreciate this. We can be like, oh man, like we just beat, or I would say the two in-state Big 12 opponents that Cougar fans generally, I feel confident speaking of them here, have the most, depending on which one you have it towards, the most negative feelings towards beating them, kicking the S out of one of those teams on their fancy new home court, and beating Texas Tech, avenging your one home loss last season, and just turning West Virginia into a fine powder. Yet it all seemed kind of routine, Bobby.
Yeah, it was one of those things where you were kind of like, yeah, of course we won those games. And then you kind of look back and you go, wait, we just beat a top 25 KenPom team, a top 50 KenPom team, and a top 70 KenPom team. Like, I know, like, that's what Sampson has done to us. We were actually talking about the crowd at tonight's game and how it just kind of sounded a little quiet, things like that. And I was like, it's kind of boring, man. Like, we just absolutely have run West Virginia off the court. When West Virginia didn't score, not to dive into this game, when they didn't score for 8 minutes, when West Virginia didn't score for 8 minutes, the crowd is excited, but at some point you just go, all right, like, it's going to be weird when Sampson's no longer our coach, and it's going to be interesting, just kind of big picture, to think about what that looks like, and what do these kind of weeks where you play, 3 top 70 teams look like in the future.
Yeah, you did to West Virginia what we saw this program under Kelvin Sampson after, let's say, about the 4th year, do with pretty insane consistency to most of the bottom half, even bottom 2/3 of the American Conference, which is crazy because West Virginia is much, much better than all of those bottom half, bottom 2/3 of the AAC opponents that I kind of just alluded to there. Also, tonight we have some football to talk about as well. Speaking of things that would have seemed crazy years ago but are now routine, Bobby, we have a loaded transfer class to talk about on the football side as well. A sport that I'm very excited to talk about beginning their Cougar season there. We're going to do a season preview of the tennis team on this episode as well. A lot of Cougar happenings tonight, Bobby. It is almost 10 p.m. your time, so if you're okay with it, I will dally no more, and we'll get to the Cougar Sports Talk.
Yeah, buddy, let's go.
Patreon.com/SH podcast. I did plug the Patreon today, but getting to Cougar men's basketball, as we've already talked about a decent amount tonight, coming off 3 Big 12 wins since we last sat in front of microphones and talked about the Houston Cougars. I was thinking, Bobby, though we could go either direction here. This is something, of all things we talked about pre-show, we didn't talk about this. Do you want to go least to most recent?
Yeah, that's fine.
So, very enjoyable one there, talking about a 69-65 win over the Texas Tech Red Raiders, even if anyone who's being honest, both Cougar or Red Raider fan, would say it was a fairly stressful point A to point B, but thankfully, once we got to point B, it was a very happy final for your Houston Cougars. It's kind of been custom between these two teams that when they take the court, it was something like a street fight, rock fight, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, as I kind of alluded to, it certainly didn't look like the Cougs were a gimme to win this one in the later stages of this game, but the Cougs, none more so than your freshman sensation, Kingston Flemings, found the way to make the tough shots to get the lead and kept it and really locked down the Red Raiders when they were on the offensive end for those critical final couple minutes of the game as well. Never felt easy. And if you went and looked at Bobby and I's text message exchanges, we'll say from around the 9-10 minute mark of the second half to the 5-minute mark, neither of us were overflowing with confidence that the Cougs win this basketball game, though I don't believe we were unreasonably negative about the situation either. Again, worth a reminder, inside of 4 minutes left in this game, the Cougars were down 4 points. It was not a stress-free experience. I've said it now 4 or 5 times for anyone with a rooting interest here. But, I mean, if you look at this game, neither the Cougs or Texas Tech went on a notable double-digit run at any time in this game. It was really, to use the fight sports metaphor, kind of two boxers trading punches and jabs. For stretches, the Cougs looked like the slightly better team, but for stretches, Tech certainly looked like the better team, certainly didn't go away when you were playing well early on. And it felt like U of H was perpetually stuck in these 3 to 4 point deficits before you finally got some shot making late. Shout out Kingston Fleming's there in those final few minutes, while you still had good defense throughout. Pretty quick summary of how we got here, Bobby. What were your big takeaways from this win over the Red Raiders?
Yeah, the first thing I think of is how, if you are a college basketball fan, you love that game versus Texas Tech. Um, you know, like I said, either last week or the week before, how much I like to go and check out the game flow section of the ESPN game review. And yeah, man, that's a exciting ride there. Score was tied at the half, and it really kind of felt like that game should have been tied at the half. I don't think either team really distanced themselves, to your point, from each other. I don't think one team looked particularly better at the half than the other. I think where I actually kind of got concerned with this game was around the 8-9 minute mark of the second half. And there's something I like to call the shut the F up 3. And to just kind of explain what the shut the F up 3 is, it happens when you're on the road and you're winning, but the home team's kind of starting to come back, and suddenly their crowd kind of gets back into it. And then you go down the court, you nail a 3, and it's so good, like, when your team does it, to watch the crowd, like, standing up, and they got their towels going, or they're screaming, and then you hit that shut the F up 3.
I want to say Uzan hit one of those in Lubbock last year.
Yes, and you just watch everyone sit down, right? And you just watch everyone kind of sit down. Well, they actually hit 2 of those on us, and they were kind of back to back, right? With about 9 minutes left, Tugler cuts the lead to 2. You see the crowd really start to get loud. Atwell comes down, hits that shut the F up 3. That extends the lead back to 5. Coogs come down, get the alley-oop from Sinak, gets it, and throws it down. And again, crowd pumped up, right? So now you cut it to 3 after that. Atwell comes down, nails another 3, and the crowd quiets right back down. And Tech suddenly went from being up 2 to being up 6. That was kind of where I went, uh-oh, like, this game doesn't feel very good, just as a fan of the team that just had to shut the F up 3. It hit on them. But the Cougs just kind of chipped away after that. And I just want to say, the Kingston Fleming's dagger to put the Cougs up by 4, to just kind of end it, just made my heart sing, man. The game that Kingston Fleming's had was the stuff you dream of from a veteran, let alone a freshman. The 23 points he got really stands out, but if you really watch that game, it was when those 23 points occurred. Those 23 points came at very, very clutch moments. I also want to point out that you stayed out of foul trouble. I don't know if you noticed that.
I had that in my notes, so great minds thinking alike here.
Yeah, you stayed out of foul trouble, so you mostly played with your starters. You went through, and I was looking through minutes played, things like that. No starter had under 30 minutes. I think the lowest was JoJo, maybe at 31. I don't have it pulled up directly in front of me, but I think somebody had 31. It may have been Sinak with 31. And they played a lot of their starters most of the game as well. I think they went 7 or 8 deep, whereas we kind of went 9, and we got those in kind of late. But you still looked fresh. You still looked good to go. You still look like a team that could have played another 20 if absolutely needed. That game, what it looked like at the end of the game was that if the Cougs, if for some reason that did go into overtime, it really kind of felt like the Cougs had the life in them to really go and in that game there.
This game was also an interesting combo of the Cougs being held back by some of this current season's teams' pain points, but also finding a new way to win, a way to win that we essentially had not seen this year's team really do yet. Yeah. Like this kind of felt like the game script to the Tennessee game, the one loss you've had this season. But unlike the Tennessee game, you actually found a way to win. I mean, the usual struggle area that I alluded to a second ago, it's shooting. I mean, the Cougs shot under 50% on 2-pointers, never great. And you were sitting on 2 made 3-pointers until very, very late in this basketball game. But on the flip side, this team, which has been one of the worst in the entire country at getting the free throw line, won this very close game in no small part because they got to the free throw line at double the rate of their opponent and made most of those freebies. I mean, not surprisingly, Tech fans online aren't thrilled about that, but equally unsurprisingly aren't able to actually provide any specific call that game's crew obviously missed. It didn't do anything but fill my heart with joy, Bobby, that Sanak and Tugler were combined 6 of 7 on their freebies last Tuesday night. Probably fair to say that Sharp's contributions in this game were pretty front-loaded. Like he did a lot of it early, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Still, I mean, even acknowledging that, it was still good to see Sharp coming off not good shooting performances the last 2 times out against Cincy and Middle Tennessee. He came out firing in this one and was a major, major part of the guards really putting the clamps on guys like Christian Anderson, Lawan Watts, who both had, I think, some of their worst shooting performances of the season at Fertitta. It's still fair to say that this team's offense remains a work in progress, at least as it comes to putting the ball in the basket, because of most of the metrics. This is a joke between us now off air, but every other metric but putting the ball in the basket, the Cougs are quite good at offensively. But obviously the shooting concerns still remain. But if you had any defense specific concerns that maybe this year's team with 2 freshman starters and a 3rd freshman playing a pretty key bench role, if you had concerns that this team could defend at the level that we've almost taken for granted is going to happen under Kelvin Sampson, as Cougar fans, I would say this team now, Bobby, and certainly did in this one, conclusively answer those questions. I think answer them further also in the games we're going to talk about against Baylor, West Virginia, but this was a really, really good defensive effort. I don't know if this team is as psychotically stingy as previous year's teams at preventing opponents from making shots, though by any metric, they're still among the best in the sport at doing it. But this team has so far been among the very best Sampson's had here at protecting the ball and turning opponents over, which is a just unbelievable combo that can make up for some other key deficiencies. You said it. Love that JoJo Tugler gave you his most minutes the entire season. I looked it up. Chris Sanak also had his most minutes since the Tennessee game in Vegas. And with all respect to Khalifa Sacco, who has played a bigger positive role in U of H winning games to date than probably you or I would have thought going into the season, didn't hurt that you had your 2 starting big men out there playing key minutes down the stretch when you're getting back in this game. And in JoJo's case, really just doing an incredible job blending his usual defensive disruption, grabbed nearly as many offensive boards as well as Tech's entire team. He had 7, Tech had 8. And I think doing enough offensively, we'll say, to be a threat there. Yes, JT Toppin got his offensively, but I thought the Cougs also did a good enough job denying him the ball at key moments. And I don't think you saw JT Toppin truly take this game over, though nobody would call 18 points and 11 boards anything but a good day's work. I mean, their freshman Jalen Petty torched the Cougars. 5 of 9 from beyond the arc, had a game high, or Tech high, excuse me, because Kingston had the game high, 20 points. But that you were able to keep Christian Anderson and Lawan Watts from having any consistent positive offensive impact in this game, I think was a big part of winning it. Donovan Atwell did a great job, hit some really key shots, hit the STFU 3 that you mentioned earlier, but I thought the Cougs did a good job defensively. My last thought, don't think I'm saying anything revolutionary here. Kingston Flemings has it. However you'd like to define it, Kingston Flemings has it. And there will be games this year where Flemings isn't the reason U of H wins. I mean, the games we're about to talk about weren't Kingston's best shooting performances this season. But I'm more than happy to come on here and admit when I'm wrong quite often about U of H stuff. But I promise you, Bobby, in real time, I had no doubt when Flemings cocked back for that 3 late that it was going in. Like, I was already like readying myself to get him off the couch. Like, that's this guy. Like, he is that dude. He is someone in key moments that does things that I don't think even the biggest optimists in this fan base about Kingston Fleming's can do.
Yeah, absolutely. You knew it was good when he pulled up. You're like, well, church. And if you were a Tech fan, I think even you knew it was probably church. But you have to go. Maybe he'll miss it, and that didn't even look like it touched any part of the rim.
No, just had to nose going in. Have to mention Bobby Grant McCasland now 1-4 against the Houston Cougars. I really do think rivalry talk aside, I enjoy being this opponent very much. I enjoy their fans being big P babies online about losing this game and us really owning them in this sport. But this has organically developed into, I believe, one of the best sport specific rivalries in the whole Big 12 conference. Not to say that there aren't any other good basketball rivalries, but I mean, right now, Bobby, look at the kind of the traditional ones in the conference, your KU, K-State, Arizona, ASU, BYU, Utah. Those are kind of imbalanced by one of the programs being noticeably worse than the other. And for all the smack talk I have for the fact that Grant McCasland can barely beat Kelvin Sampson's Houston Cougars, that's a very good team. And they'll be very hard to beat a little bit later this month. I think just over a week from today for that return game in Lubbock. I know we had some common dislike in good basketball games with Memphis, but I could say now, having experienced several U of H Tech games and all the Memphis U of H games, this is so much better.
It's so much better just because, like, even living here in Dallas, I know a ton of Tech people, right? Like, there's a golf club shop that I go to maybe once a week. He's getting new stuff all the time. Nice guy is the owner. And we just have a friendly little wager. He's a nice guy. We have a friendly wager that he shares the shopping center with a guy with a donut shop, and we bet a donut on it. Nothing major, nothing like that. We don't talk a ton of smack, but it's more fun to have rivals that you see pretty often. Like, I worked with a guy for a while who was a Memphis fan. He lived in Memphis, and we would talk a little bit of smack back and forth, but man, I don't see, he's the only Memphis fan I knew, right? I know a lot of Tech people, and I know people who know Tech fans that talk all a bunch of noise and things like that. So yeah, it's just so much more fun.
I hate that the one Tech guy I know here, a guy I play paddle with sometimes, and we'll talk sports a little bit here and there, but could not be a nicer guy. And I would feel like the biggest piece of crap if I went like, "Hey Randy, how'd your team do?" Shout out Randy. All right, we'll get to the next game, a classic Sampson era Cougar basketball, and Bobby knows what I mean by classic. On Saturday early afternoon in Waco over the Baylor Bears, a 77-55 win, a decisive win. And a classic for the very things that made it not always a pretty watch. But if you've been following this program under Kelvin Sampson for a number of years, as we have, it was, you didn't shoot the ball well by any objective metric. Coogs finished the game shooting well below 40%, though to be fair, they shot pretty well in the second half. You were minus 18 at the free throw line, and it didn't matter because the Cougs absolutely mauled Baylor on the glass, almost triple the number of offensive rebounds. And this game was never really close after the Cougs responded to Baylor's super hot shooting start with a 23-3 run around mid first half. And Baylor did periodically, at least in the first half, cut the score single digits, but this was never really a game you sweated outside of that very, very early in the game, Baylor just making everything they threw up. Bobby, what were your big takeaways from this third straight Cougar win at Foster Pavilion?
Yeah, I think you said my biggest takeaway. I think I texted you this like at halftime, maybe, as I was like, this really is like a classic 2019 to 2021 kind of Kelvin Sampson era where there seems to be a little bit of a lid on the bucket, but in one possession you're getting 3 shot attempts. You just win that way. That was how original Kelvin Sampson teams won. That's why we joked about it last week about, did you know that they practice with a bubble on top? But like, the reason why they talked about that all the time in games was because we were just out rebounding everybody by a bajillion, right? So like, they were like, what can we focus on with this team? And it's like, how the hell are they getting all these rebounds? It really felt like that on Saturday. If those first 5 minutes didn't make you, I'm not saying concerned, but raise an eyebrow, like, oh no, like, okay, surely they can't keep shooting this well and we can't keep shooting this poorly. That can't continue to happen. Like, if you didn't at least say that, you're like, you're better than me. But I'm not saying that like I was, panicked going, oh my God, we're going to lose this game. But
I
it
think
was
I saw
definitely
almost
one of the,
verbatim what you said to myself. I was like, okay, they can't keep making it this clip.
yeah.
Can they?
And you kind of had to tell yourself, talk yourself off the ledge a little bit. Like, you're playing good defense. Like, we were getting hands and faces. They weren't wide open threes where it's just defensive lapses. It was just, they make shots, but, like I said, I wasn't in full panic, but I was definitely like, hey, wait a minute. They can't continue to do this. But then they scored 1 point in like a 7-minute stretch. And after that, it was church, man. That was game over. One of the things from this game that I just want to continue watching is the emergence of Chris Sinak offensively. Coming into the season, we heard a lot about his ability to knock down the three, knock down shots, and for the first real time this year, it really felt like we saw that, especially with him going 3 for 3 from beyond the arc. If that continues, you'll see his defenders have to start pulling out of the lane a little bit and respecting that 3-point ability. And so that's going to free the lane up, and maybe we see a little bit more Milo Suzanne going through and attacking the basket and dishing it out to shooters, or Kingston Flemings running through the lane and kicking it out to an Emmanuel Sharp or Milo, something like that.
No doubt. The defensive performance here is worth zooming in on. Baylor came into this game as, statistically, they still are, really. They just dropped 94 in Oklahoma State and beat them at their place. One of the best, most efficient offenses in the country. And having watched this game, I think the 55 points Baylor ended up scoring flattered their offensive effort. I feel like they got a decent number of those in the final 4 or 5 minutes when this was absolutely any definition of garbage time. This game was their worst points output home or away this season, their highest turnover percentage in a game so far this season. And the Cougs also did something that hasn't always been this team's strength this year, even historically. You kept an elite offensive rebounding opponent mostly off the glass. We knew coming in that Baylor generally struggled keeping opponents off the boards, and the Cougs absolutely killed them there. Your starting front court of Tugler and Sinak had as many offensive boards as the entire Baylor team. I mean, this team was one offensive rebound away from grabbing more misses than Baylor did. Like, you had 22 offensive boards and they had 23 defensive boards. Like, that's an insane set. We used to do that sometimes in American Conference play. And it's crazy to see that happening now against a Big 12 opponent who, even in kind of a down year for their program, still very good. Still would have been probably the best AAC team we saw year in, year out. And you just little boyed it, man. And you did all that with Kingston Flemings in foul trouble early. He ended up having a good game. And you certainly can say that he contributed to the Cougs turning this one into a laugher in the second half. But for that first half stretch where you got the lead, you went on that 23-3 run and never ended up relinquishing the lead, Flemings was pretty much sitting on the bench the entire time with 2 fouls. Also, want to really zoom in on Flemings and Uzan combining for 12 assists and 2 turnovers. I know this wasn't Uzan's best game shooting the ball, but I think still affected the offense positively for the Cougars. Was part of that great defensive performance as well. And we talked a lot about how good the Cougars have been at turning opponents over, but also worth mentioning that this team has been every bit as good protecting the ball, which I think is no small feat when you have a freshman who likes to play fast, taking a not small percentage of your point guard reps. I'm not going to hand wave away the probability that this team will at some point have a poor shooting performance, by the numbers shooting performance, like the one we did in Waco with fewer offensive boards against one of the Big 12's other very, very good programs, and it'll end in a loss. I mean, the Big 12 was too good to expect anything different, but you also can't overlook that being a really good offensive rebounding team like the Cougs are can make up for not being a dead-eye team at putting the ball in the basket. You'd like to get better there, but I think this team has been, by any definition, a great to elite offensive rebounding team. It is only the fact that there have been so many just absurdly good offensive rebounding teams in the seasons before this one that this team is actually in the low end offensive rebounding wise. But this game is a reminder that, oh yeah, this team is still really fucking good at that. Like that was my biggest takeaway. And you really broke Baylor's spirit doing that.
Yeah, I think that is a great way to put it. You just broke them. Like, you could just tell uh, once they didn't score for a while for that like 8-minute period, that game was over. You could have just said, yeah, can we all go home at halftime? Like, even though it was like 7 at halftime, I think it wasn't at the same time. You know what I mean? Like, you knew that 7 was kind of being generous because the Cougs didn't really score that well in the first half.
I could just say it's not recency bias. I was more, and I wasn't that stressed on the situation. I was more stressed when West Virginia cut the lead to 11 in tonight's game than when Baylor had it at 7 at halftime. It just never felt like they were coming back in that one.
Yeah, that was a game, and you could see it in their fans as well. Like, co-host emeritus Dustin was there, and we didn't ask him this, or at least I didn't.
I didn't either.
But you could just hear it. Like I said that place got loud last year. Like, that stadium gets loud, like, and it sounded like you could hear a pin drop in that place.
Yeah, even when they made shots, you almost just didn't see the crowd really like believe that Baylor could get back in there.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a funny irony, by the way, in Baylor bringing in James Najee, previously an NBA draft pick who never played any NBA minutes, but it did cause some controversy as a NBA drafted guy playing college. There's the irony of all that outrage and him being, I mean, at this point in his career, a pretty terrible big man. Like, come on, like we gotta mention that. I mean, this Baylor team reminded us tonight when they beat Oklahoma State that they're not as bad as they looked against the Cougars. But I don't know. I still didn't see an NCAA team on the other side of the floor there. I mean, last year's team was a flawed team, but they had VJ Edgecombe, a difference maker. I'm not saying Tonde Yesufu isn't a good player, but he's not VJ Edgecombe. I don't think anyone would really argue that. I didn't see an opponent Saturday who looked like an NCAA tournament level team. And maybe the rest of the season will prove me wrong there, but I don't think a lot of Baylor fans would strongly disagree with my assertion there.
Yeah, it definitely feels like they're going to be one of those teams that's kind of sitting on the bubble in there, and they're hoping that they get in. Maybe something like a win versus U of H, or even looking even kind of competitive in that game would have helped them. I mean, you guys know how we feel about bracketology on ESPN, but they have Baylor listed as one of the first 4 out, the first 4 out, I guess. I don't really know how to say that, but yeah, definitely a team that they're hoping can get in, and maybe they can turn it around a little bit, but I don't know if it looks great for them getting in.
It's the nightmare scenario of being a bubble team fan. They're elite offensively, so they're capable of stuff like they did tonight, just torching a pretty decent Oklahoma State team in their building, but also just so deficient defensively and keeping opponents from offensive rebounds. That's going to make a lot of games just very frustrating. And you get tantalized by the offensive excellence and just crashing back down to earth when they have a game like they did against the Cougars on Saturday. Couldn't happen to a better fan base, honestly.
Yeah, things you hate to see, buddy. Things you hate to see.
On the note, Tech and Baylor are now a combined 1 of 8 against the Cougs since the Cougs joined the Big 12. And I would imagine this is especially galling for Baylor fans that 3 of the 4 head-to-heads have occurred in Waco in your new building in front of what looked like, at least from TV, good crowds, and you lost all 3. This definitely had the potential to be another really good in-state Big 12 men's basketball rivalry, but it's not arrogance for me to say Baylor right now isn't close to being the level of U of H or even Texas Tech. And that has to sting for Baylor fans who probably still remember the 2021 national champion. Scott Drew had a national championship caliber team the year the tournament didn't happen in 2020. And now the team's being honestly talked about as they might be in the bubble. Like that's gotta be galling. And my heart bleeds for them, as you can hear in my tone.
Yeah, just what a terrible situation for them to have to experience.
And last but not least, we also had tonight a 77-48 win by your Houston Cougars over the West Virginia Mountaineers. A game that I don't think will make a lot of the end of the season highlight reel, as it wasn't the most beautiful Cougar win, but this might have been one of the best offensive efforts of the season, Bobby. As weird as it is to say, as much as this game wasn't a super virtuoso, I was going for the previous attempt there, shooting performance, 77 against this opponent is pretty doggone good, man. We didn't get a chance to preview. This game kind of fell into an awkward spot. We thought we were going to record before and then decide. My co-host, I very, very generously ceded to doing this game pretty late on his time, so we could talk about this game in the past tense, not be previewing a game that was probably coming out 8 or 9 hours after you guys woke up and saw this in your feeds. Really, really, really dominant win. And West Virginia didn't make it easy or pretty at times, but that you did what you did, that you turned this opponent into fine powder, that you, for the 7th time in 16 tries this season, led wire to wire. Not as impressive when you do that against, say, Lehigh or Jackson State, but doing this against, don't know if they're an NCAA team, but at least a good, solid Big 12 program, making a good, solid Big 12 program look like, I know they're catching strays for the second week in a row, East Carolina basketball out there. It's an achievement, even if it was almost kind of workmanlike. Like you said, like I don't want to overstate our criticisms of the crowd. Shout out to everyone who was there in Houston tonight cheering on the Cougs at the Fertitta Center. But I'm kind of coming around to your point there. Like when you were just kicking the S out of someone for 40 minutes, like at a certain point, like you almost can't sustain the enthusiasm. But it was a great performance from start to finish. One of the best defensive efforts, one of the best offensive efforts. Bobby, what were your big takeaways from this one?
Yeah, we to the point of, it wasn't the most exciting game because you were just kicking the S out of them. Dude, I literally folded laundry during this game. Like, I had done laundry earlier, kind of leading up to the game while dinner was going and whatnot, and I was like, well, we're up like 30. I have my thoughts about what this game looked like pretty much established at this point, so I don't need to watch it all the way, right? Like, I don't need to be like sitting here taking notes like I do for other games. It was like you kind of set the notebook to the side and you're just like, yeah, we kicked their ass. So like, yeah, I can forgive the crowd for not being super into it, because I wasn't at home. Like, and again, it's crazy to think that you're doing that against Big 12 competition. No matter who it is in the Big 12, like, there's one team in the Big 12 that I'd be like, yeah, I mean, we should expect to just dominate them, right? Based on where we are. But like, you did this to a team who might be going deep in like an NIT, right? Like, West Virginia could make the tournament, probably not. Doesn't really have the resume, but they're not a bad team. They're a top 70 KenPom team. Like, that's pretty good, man. That's pretty good to just go out and just dominate them like that. So yeah, to your point, I don't quote unquote blame the crowd there. I think 29 maybe makes this game feel a little bit more of a blowout than it was. You extended it to 31, but West Virginia, to their credit, kept kind of clawing away at it. I think they cut it to 11 at one point, to get you just a little where you have to think about it a little bit. I said I was watching Sinak, 2 of 5, 1 of 4, but 10 rebounds. You saw a lot more from him. One of the things that I'm noticing from him the last kind of couple of games, one of the things that these U of H teams of 2019, 2021 were always really good at was maybe your bigs just getting a hand on it and popping it out, and just kind of popping it out to a guard or something.
JoJo's really good at that too.
JoJo's really good at it, but I've just noticed the last couple of games you've really seen Sinak really hustling to get that play. And that's how Kingston Flemings has 5 rebounds, right? Like, I'm not saying that Kingston Flemings doesn't go down and work the boards, right? But Kingston Flemings, Emmanuel Sharp having 9 rebounds combined between the two, really, and Tugler only having 6, and Sinak having, like, that really feels like a situation where, Kingston's getting credit for the rebound when it pops out to him. I think the game you got from Milo Suzan, Milos really kind of comes through for you here. Looks really good. I'm really hoping that the last couple of games that you got from those two, from Milos and Sharp, I'm really hoping that what you got from them the last two games is kind of what we should expect going forward. You had another good game from Emmanuel Sharp here as well. 5 of 13, maybe not the most efficient. Kingston Flemings, you'd like to see a little bit more from him. 3 of 10, but who can really fault Kingston Flemings for anything at this point? He still gets you 10 and 7 assists. I think he had a great game. And Milos was just kind of on fire, especially early. He really kind of during those moments where you really early in the game wanted to establish where you were, and when West Virginia wasn't scoring, Milos really stepped up and was able to put in a couple of threes to really separate you and not have a scoring drought of your own there.
My player who, if you looked at the box score, you wouldn't really think twice about their game, but I was encouraged by what I saw from him, especially in the second half. You probably know where I'm going with this. Isaiah Harwell got an extended look in the second half. Not that he's not getting minutes when it's a close game, but you could tell because of the deficit West Virginia was in here, like he was getting a bit longer look than obviously he was getting in the second half against Texas Tech, a closer kind of game. And 2 of 8 from the field is 2 of 8 from the field. I won't entirely sugarcoat it, but he looks like he has the confidence to shoot, and he's starting to make the Houston Cougar basketball kind of plays, like diving for ball. He maybe related, looks like a guy who's no longer as like, because there's nobody who's gone through a significant knee injury like Isaiah has gone through and not at least had some acclimation period in their sport. They're like getting the confidence of what I can and can't do versus what I did, before I had this significant, I would say, to his point, like short career altering injury. And he's starting to look like the Isaiah Harwell we expected to, a confident guy, a guy who, even when the shots aren't falling, when he has decent looks, he's going to give you those, a guy that's going to be around the basketball. Like he was fighting for the ball when he got elbowed in the head and got that flagrant foul call. Like obviously you prefer him not get the 2 points via, an elbow to the head. Nothing malicious, I think, really there by the West Virginia player. But like he's doing Houston Cougar basketball stuff, which seems overly simple. It seems reductive, but he's starting to look like the guy we expected to versus a freshman who's still trying to get his feet under him, which he maybe looked like a bit earlier on coming off the bench back in non-conference play. Love seeing it from Milos using. I think 5 of 9 from deep isn't what we should expect every night, but it's good to know he's still capable of that because he gave you some of those performances last year where he was just really hitting everything. I think I mentioned earlier the Texas Tech game in Lubbock. Like I believe that was one of those performances. Arizona certainly was one of those performances. It's not going to be every night from the guy. Thankfully, you have other offensive playmakers that are capable of doing that. Kingston Flemings and Emmanuel Sharp, I think, at the top of that list. But it reminded you, if those guys aren't having incredibly off shooting nights, and neither Sharp or Fleming shot it incredibly well, but they were involved offensively and did some good stuff. But if you have those 2 guys at least hitting some shots and Milos Uzan hitting above his usual averages, this is going to be a very hard team to beat. This is the team we kind of expect in the preseason with those 2 key returning guards, Uzan and Sharp, and an exciting freshman Flemings who's playing a bigger role than I think we honestly expected. That makes this team hell on wheels, in addition to the fact that West Virginia just got nothing easy offensively. Like DJ Thomas going 4 or 5 from deep, and I don't know how many of those 5 I thought were bad defense, Like
absolutely.
Feeling it,
I think this team, and this is a classic case of Kelvin Sampson here, right? This team that we kind of build up in the offseason and in the preseason going like, dude, look at what this could be. This team's the number 2 in the country. Like, Ken Palm preseason number 1 by a lot. Like, this is, and it usually takes the teams a couple of months to gel, right? Like, it's you hear the stories about JoJo and what he kind of went through in the offseason and when he got sick and didn't eat with the flu, or what did he have? I can't remember.
JoJo had off-season surgery, and he also has wisdom teeth removed back around
wisdom
Christmas.
teeth. That's what it was, not a sickness. But like, I think Sampson the other day said, you got to realize that JoJo didn't touch a basketball from like May to September. And when you think about it that way, you can see how he lost a lot of his touch, right? That was a thing we were complaining about early in the season. And I'm not saying like you, it was me too.
Oh yeah.
I was like, JoJo is a lot. Luckily,
he shot badly. We can call a spade a spade. He shot badly. He would probably say, I shot badly.
Yeah, and it was definitely one of those things where we were like, this is a concern and we need to look out for it. And suddenly, JoJo isn't putting up a ton of points. Like, how many did he get?
He's doing what we expected him to do.
Yeah, he got you 10 tonight. 5 offensive rebounds. He went 4 or 5 from the floor. Like, that's what you need from JoJo Tugler here. JoJo, we need you to get blocks. 0 tonight, but they scored 48. So
4 steals. JoJo, I think I'm not looking at the box score. I think 4 steals.
4 steals, 6 boards, 10 points. JoJo, that's exactly what we need from you. That's what we need from JoJo Tugler. And JoJo's making a lot of plays. I don't know if you've noticed this either, where he's making plays, saving balls going out of bounds. He's just being the disruptive force that we kind of thought he would be. And you can see on the offensive side, they're really trying to establish him early to kind of get him in a little bit of rhythm. And I kind of like it right now. So overall, I think you're seeing this team do that thing that Kelvin Sampson teams do, where they start out a little slow. Heck, we saw it last year, right? Like last year, you started out okay, but in Big 12 play, didn't we start like 2 and 3 or something like that off the top of my head?
1 and 2, the TCU and Iowa State losses.
Yeah, that's what it was.
We lost.
Yeah, and so you're just kind of like, and then look, here they are. They have developed and I think it's partly, especially with young guys like this and with new guys into the system, the defensive system is kind of hard to get. Like if you watch videos on it and people kind of breaking it down, like the pressure and the blitz that we throw at the ball with our big men and the rotations that we use to make sure that big men just aren't flying to the basket free, that they're not getting those rollers to the basket free. And that's a lot to learn and a lot to process. And you're really seeing it. It usually takes a month or two. And he always says, do you want to be the best team in November or do you want to be the best team in March and April?
I have a couple insane JoJo stats if you allow me. I'm on his KenPom page.
Please, let's go.
He has had no fewer than 5 offensive boards in all 4 Big 12 games so far this year. 4 steals twice tonight and also in the opener against Cincy. I think you've seen his block numbers go down, not because of any like lack of blocking prowess. Teams have a year of film on JoJo.
Yes.
Teams have probably told their big man, not saying like don't challenge him in those exact words, but like if you put anything that's even halfway blockable up there, like this guy is going to swat it out. I think that is like the phenomenon of a really good lockdown corner not having a lot of counting stats because just nobody is throwing him. I believe that is at least some of what we're seeing with Tugler there. And still, in the ways I just mentioned, proving himself to be active in other ways and valuable to you. In addition to, since Arkansas, 4 of 5 from the field against Arkansas, 6 of 9 from the field against Middle Tennessee, 4 of 5 against Cincy, 4 of 8 against Tech, 5 of 8 against Baylor, 4 of 5 tonight against West Virginia. Never going to be your highest volume guy, never should be your highest volume guy, but he's giving you that consistent offensive performance that we had hoped to see from a guy who definitely looks more confident on that end of the floor versus what he was his first 2 years in the program.
Yeah, and the other thing about JoJo is he may not get that counting stat, kind of like you said, but he's disruptive to other teams' offenses. He's very much the nose tackle. We kind of talked about Carlos Allen and how this year he may not get a ton of tackles, which he ended up doing, so I'll shut up. But maybe a bad comparison there. But like
generally the nose tackle.
Generally, nose tackles, defensive tackles are there to clog it up so your linebackers get a bunch of tackles and can make plays. And that's kind of what you see with JoJo, right? Like, you don't see many guards really drive into the hole if they think JoJo's going to be able to get there on rotation.
He affects shots just by being on the floor, which again, he's also done a much better job doing with foul trouble these past several games. My other West Virginia game thought is Amir Jenkins hit one of the most insane dipsy doos literally as the shot clock. This didn't affect the game at all. The classic, that meme, the Chris Paul hits a big shot to cut to 40 something. Didn't really affect the outcome of the game, but I don't think I'll see 5 more ridiculous shots from a Cougar opponent this year than Amir Jenkins making that as the shot clock expired. So I wanted to at least
it was
the public.
It was absolutely
sick. Any other thoughts on this game, Bobby?
No, man. I think anytime you win by almost 30, it's hard to have any kind of negative thought about it at all.
No doubt. As we've mentioned a couple times now, we were recording pretty late, and honestly, the one opponent playing in the time between now and when we record next doesn't really merit a long deep dive, but we will at least quickly talk about the Cougs' remaining opponent this week, the Arizona State Sun Devils, who we will see for the only time during the regular season on Sunday in the early evening at the Fertitta Center. ASU Bobby is doing a very Chris Pesman era U of H thing here. And what I mean by that is they've kept their underperforming longtime head coach who hasn't won that much recently, who is now in the final year of his contract for reasons that essentially seem to boil down to cheapness and a prioritization of their much more successful football program. And I will say their longtime head coach, who I alluded to, Bobby Hurley, has had some success here. Hurley led the Sun Devils to the NCAAs in 2023. From 2018 to 20, he had 3 teams in a row who were NCAA tournament caliber. Obviously, the last year the tournament didn't happen, but Ken Palm projected them to be in the field 68. He's made the NCAA tournament as many times as all of his predecessors, going back to Ken Palm's first season, 1997, and likely would have had a 4th team if you'd had an NCAA tournament during the COVID year. But you can also understand why ASU's leadership isn't falling over themselves to extend Hurley either. I mean, the only team currently rated lower in the Big 12 right now in the Sun Devils is Utah. And yeah, I would say ASU is almost certainly the worst team the Cougs will see at home in Big 12 play. If you do want to look at what ASU does that might give the Cougs some problems, not a long list of things, but they've been very, very, very good at getting to the free throw line and are shooting a respectable 75% on those freebies. Always something to watch against Cougar team that plays a physical brand of ball. You're going to draw some whistles, especially if you get the wrong crew. They have a 7'1" freshman big man, Masamba Jop, who started every game, has really, really upped his game since Big 12 play started. He's had 3 20-plus point performances in all 3 of their Big 12 games so far. Mo Odom's a transfer from Pepperdine. He's their point guard. Not a super efficient scorer, but currently 33rd in the nation in assist rate. Has kind of had to shoulder a fair amount of their offense as well, led to the not super efficient shooting numbers. ASU also has a 6'11" sophomore big man, Santiago Troet, in the front court, but much less of a consistent scorer there than Jop. Defensively, I mean, just call it what it is. They have not been good at preventing opponents from putting the ball in the basket, but they've been very good at turning opponents over, which will be a good strength on strength matchup with the Cougars. They generally want to play up tempo. Hurley's teams historically kind of a team that wants to play in the 70s, 80s, or even 90s, which is another interesting styles contrast with the Cougars. Bobby, what would you like to add about the Sun Devils?
Yeah, I was kind of looking at a reason why I think ASU can really pull the upset here, and it's kind of hard, they don't do anything exceptionally well. To your point, they are like 75th in KenPom. It may have changed with some games tonight. But tempo, they're 71st in KenPom. So close enough, good enough for government work. But we've seen us have to try and match tempos or play teams that do that better, and we did really well against them. So I don't know, it doesn't concern me a ton. You mentioned Jop. Size has been a little bit of a bugaboo for the Cougs this year. Not that it's been like a, oh my God, end of the world kind of deal. We've seen to have done pretty well with it, but that would be the one thing that I would kind of look at. Question. I don't know if you tried to look into this. Is Jop's dad Desagana Jop? Early 2000s Dallas Maverick. I tried to look it up. He is the coach of the country, but I don't know if he is if he's dad. Like I tried to look it up and I couldn't find it. I don't know if Jop's like Smith. Right?
I think it is a common enough name that I would lean no, but he's also old. Like he would be the exact age to have a kid who's in college.
Yes.
I looked at him, he's 43 right now, so him having an 18 or 19-year-old son like actually lines up time wise.
I thought that guy was going to be the answer for the Mavericks to handle a lot of really good basketball players, because if that's one thing the Mavs never had was a good center, and Jop was the guy I was hoping. He was one of 19 guys that we tried to put in at center before Tyson Chandler. Sorry.
Apparently he was an assistant with the Rockets too under Steven Silas recently, making all kinds of
okay. There we go. I just sorry to take us on a tangent.
Okay, it doesn't mention it. It doesn't mention it in his ASU profile, and I feel like they would have at least found someone
Yeah,
and mentioned,
that's what I thought too,
former
because
NBA
I went
player,
there
so.
too. I went there too, and I looked at it, and I went to Desgana's Jobs Wikipedia, and it didn't say anything. So I'm going with no, but I was just like, hey, wait a minute, hold on.
Yeah, we're gonna assess this as likely no.
We are going to name some guys on the pod when I do this one.
I'm going to steer us back in the road here, but we'll stay on the hardwood and talk Cougar women's hoops since we did not have the time to get to them last week with the 3-host episode. And it has been a newsworthy week for this program, unfortunately not in a positive way. By all rights, though, your effort against K-State last week, probably your best effort for at least 3 and a change quarters of the season. This K-State team isn't nearly as good as their previous couple years teams, but Coogs had a really strong first half, led after the first quarter, and maybe had your best quarter of the season in the second, dominating the Wildcats 21-11. You were up 12 at halftime. Not surprisingly, K-State came roaring back in the third. The Cougs shooting fell back down to earth as they made only 20% of their shots in that period. But this was still a close game that you led well into the fourth quarter. And you probably know where I'm going with this, Bobby. At the point where the Cougs held a 53-49 lead after players from both teams were fighting for a loose ball on the baseline. It's the baseline near where U of H usually puts the visiting teams. You had K-State's Janessa Cotton throw the Cougs' Amira Abdur-Rahim onto the floor. And I think the really incendiary thing, and I watched this a few different times, started standing over her. You see immediate fracas. Cotton and Abdur-Rahim are ejected along with Cougar players, TK Pitts, Brianna Piguero, and Kendall Hunter, who I believe specifically left the bench, but was not suspended like the other three for the following game. You can tell me if I'm wrong. You tell me if you disagree. We disagree quite often. I think that actually, adds to what makes this a good podcast pairing here, buddy. I don't think I'm being a homer, though, in saying that Janessa Cotton absolutely instigated this. And if we were suspending based on culpability, Cotton should have gotten multiple games. The players all apologized afterwards. I understand why, and don't even disagree with the NCAA having a blanket rule for a 1-game suspension for a fighting ejection. But that they've apologized, that I've had a week to think on this, I don't think there's any kind of bad mark on the players and the program. Sports can be heated sometimes. The Cougs have had a tough start to conference play, which we've talked about here. I get the frustration the players were probably feeling in the moment. Did have a very negative impact on the game. In addition to missing those 4 players, K-State got 6 free throws, which they made, and then never gave back the lead.
They got 8.
They got 8?
No, 6 free throws. They got 6.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I was looking at the play-by-play. I thought I got it right.
It was 2 per foul.
Yes.
And we had 4 ejections.
And there was like an offsetting one.
But then they had the offset one. So, yeah, sorry. I misspoke there.
No, you're good. So they took the lead from that, never gave back the lead, and beat the shorthanded Cougs 71-62. And it's frustrating because I think this team, if that doesn't happen, absolutely could have gotten a signature win there, and that fracas undeniably played a big part in that not happening. Bobby, what were your thoughts from that, and just thoughts from this game in general?
I was watching this game live. I don't know what I was doing at home whenever this was. I think I was sitting here and just doing some minor stuff around the house, and I had it on, and you had the incident, and yeah, I understand what you're saying, that she kind of threw her off and kind of stood over her a little bit, but like, you can't do that, right? Like, you want to get up, you want to get in her face, okay, but like, I understand that the players have the emotions and things like that. You can't do it, right? Like, it's just, and to your point, I understand the NCAA has the rule for the 1-game suspension, so you kind of hurt yourself in 2 games. I get if you get in her face a little bit and maybe you guys push and shove back and forth. We can't have 3 others come running and trying to do things like that. Like, it can't happen. If
I understand the reaction, though, to see someone standing over your teammate like that. Like, it is not, and I would think the players will all say it was not a well thought out thing they did. It was it
was definitely reactionary.
Yeah.
You just hope that you have better discipline than that. That's what I'll say there. You can't.
I would agree.
You can't do it. You shouldn't do it. I think as they were walking back to the locker room, I'm sure they were going, crap, right? But like, you just got to be better. If you want to be a winning program, you have to be better. You can't throw away games like this because you get hot-headed. Because somebody stood over you. You know, I I venture what would happen if you had 3 guys on the men's basketball team do it because a Tech player stood over one of the guys on a loose ball. Sampson's head would explode. He would You would be like, "Oh my god, I would not want to be at that Houston Cougar practice the next day." And I really hope it was that way for the women's basketball team too.
Yeah, I think everyone was contrite about the situation.
Yeah.
I think what magnified the frustration is that for the coming game against BYU, certainly to this point, your most winnable home game in Big 12 play, that you didn't have 3 starters in Pitts, Abdur-Rahim, and Peguero. And the results showed it. You only had 6 players available. And I think that showed the most early when BYU got to a big lead and had that really hot shooting first quarter. And this was a 5-point game at the half after that strong first quarter or second quarter. But you saw the much deeper visitors eventually wear down the Cougs in the second half and win this one comfortably 79-64. Kieran Merchant, one of your few veterans who suited up for this one, had 18 points. Kendall Hunter had 19 as the lone bench player. As we saw with last year's Cougar women's basketball team, though, only playing with just above the minimum players presents the exact...
Doesn't end well.
Yeah, it is going to end almost always at best like something we saw in this BYU game.
Yep. That's all you can really say about that game is you just didn't have your players, and that's another reason why you just can't have K-State happen. You know what I mean?
No doubt. That's the cost of, I think, an understandable reaction, but probably an undisciplined reaction in the moment there against K-State. A downstream effect. You lost one of your most winnable games in conference play because of it.
Yep.
So the Cougs, I would say, we again are recording this, I think maybe 2 or 3 hours after this one went final. I was not able to watch it. I was not able to be at home before the West Virginia game tipped. 12-point loss to an extremely good Texas Tech team in their building, at least on paper. You could tell me, because you actually watched all or most of this one live. Looks like on paper your best road effort of the season, if we're being honest.
Yeah, I didn't hate many of the things I saw from this team. The 9 in the first quarter, that's not great. You don't love that. But really, you came out the second half. You came into the second half down 10. And really, it was because they went on a 6-0 run. Tech went on a 6-0 run at the end of the first half by draining a 3, getting a stop, and then as time expires, a beyond half-court shot from Texas Tech sends you in down 10 instead of down 7. And I know it's only 3 points, but buddy, that feels like a lot, right? On a half-court heave, that's just demoralizing. You go in down double digits rather than 7. You're just kind of like, shit, you know what I mean? Like, but then you come out in the second half, and like, you lost by 2 in the second half. That's pretty good, man. Like, for where this team is, you're playing the top 25 Texas Tech team. You had a great effort from your team here. I liked what I saw, but it's another case of the same things that we've seen all season, right? The turnovers, you had 27 compared to Texas Tech's 21. Tech shot 10% better than you. I'm sorry, 9% better than you. This team can't make a 3-pointer. Like, it's just, you saw the same things that you've seen repeatedly. You saw it again in this game. I think a lot of it is a Jimmy's and Joe's kind of situation. I think the players are out there. The one thing that I like to see is that it doesn't feel like anyone quits on this team. Like, this team, at no point do they get down X amount of points and just look like they're coasting, right? And this is going to sound like a shot at West Virginia tonight. I didn't get that vibe from them, but like, you get down like that, it's very easy to just come down, burn your 30 seconds off the clock, and just, all right, let's go home.
Yeah, never team looks like they're going through the motions.
And I think last year, not to take a shot at a staff that has departed, but it definitely looked like you saw that in multiple games last year where there was just frustration at the inability to keep it close.
Tech was one of those teams before this season. They're very good this season. They're 18-0. I guess their larger sports investment has finally reached women's basketball in an effective way because they're very, not to speak kindly of a program that I don't want to speak very kindly of here, but it's not just them dumping money into football. They invest very well across pretty much their entire sports offering. And women's basketball is almost kind of notable for before this season not being that. And it frustrated me how, despite that, the Cougs were just uncompetitive basically every time they played Texas Tech previously. And you lost this one. And from what it sounds like, you told me you were the second best team, but it doesn't seem in the way you describe it to kind of be the same kind of effort you saw against this opponent previously. Like you're looking for silver linings here, but this was going to be kind of a looking for silver linings kind of season when you were playing the top end of the Big 12 kind of opponents.
Yep, I agree wholeheartedly.
And we have one more game in the week to come. The Cougars will be coming back home to play Utah at the Fertitta Center. More broken record stuff here, Bobby. The early schedule continues to be brutally difficult for the Cougar Lady Hoopers. The Utes have had a strong start to Big 12 play. They defeated a ranked TCU team in Salt Lake City, beat Arizona in Tucson, and also got road wins during their Sunflower State swing to Kansas and Kansas State. They've been coming into this one a super impressive 6-0 in true road contests. Senior Vatech transfer Lanny White is a big guard, true 3-level scorer who is going to be, I think, the toughest defensive assignment for the Cougs when they face the Utes. Really good defensive team, but don't necessarily do it via the usual disruption metrics, your shot blocks, your steals, that kind of thing. They're just sometimes teams that defend well without being disruptive. And that seems to generally be what this Utah team is trying to do. This is probably more winnable than maybe a few of your most brutally difficult early games, but make no mistake, if U of H has this game within single digits in the fourth quarter, then U of H has played really, really well. The Utes are a salty team.
Yeah, this is one of those, maybe not quite like a Texas Tech or like you're going to see with TCU or something like that, where it's a real measure yourself kind of game. But this game will tell you if you are making steps in the right direction in terms of, can you at least remain competitive against teams like this, teams that are where you hope to be in a year or two.
No doubt. And we have some transfer portal talk here this week from your football program. We found out a number of players who will be representing the Cougars in the coming season. Number of good answers to this question, Bobby. For once, I'm actually giving you a question that I'm not ambushing you with. Out of this group of new transfers, so not the 5 guys that you, Dustin, and I talked about last week, who's the most eye-catching ad to you? Who, when I say biggest transfer, this name comes to mind?
That's a little different, but there's
a
guy.
When you're most excited about them? When you're most excited about them?
Yeah. No. I'm with you. My answer stays the same no matter what. There was a guy who I kind of identified when he first entered the portal. And I think he's going to do a lot of really, really good stuff in a Houston uniform. That's going to be Patrick Overmeyer from UTSA, 6'5", 235 pounds. Sophomore, I think, so he'll be coming in as a junior, if I recall.
You're right about
I didn't write it down, but that's what I feel like I remembered. So you're going to get him for a couple of years. You watch highlights, and highlights can be skewed, right? You don't see him dropping passes in a highlight package, but does a good job of jumping up and high pointing the ball. You saw him with a 45-yard touchdown a couple of times. Just another target. We saw how much this quarterback in Connor, and how much Connor Wigman loves his tight end. We saw it kind of got him into the groove of this offense was Koziol early in the year. While I don't think Patrick Overmeyer may be as good as Koziol right away, I think it's going to give Connor Wigman very much the same comfort that he got with Tanner Koziol, the ability to get up and high point the ball, catch it, make some big plays. A guy who can go win jump balls. You saw that a couple of times this year with the Wigman-Koziol connection is there were a couple of times where Connor could just kind of throw it up and he would trust that Koziol was going to come down with it. So I think you're replacing him with maybe not quite as good as Koziol, but you're still going to get somebody who's very talented in here and does a lot of the same things that Tanner did. Tanner Koziol did.
Glad you did give the preface that it's not fair to expect this guy to be final season Tanner Koziol immediately out of the gate. But I still believe this 2026 U of H offense is at least going to split the difference between what you did this year with the tight end position, where it was an extremely high volume target, as it should have been when you have a tight end as good as Tanner Koziol, and what our offense has done most of really since Mark Hafner graduated in 2008. It felt like, I mean, I don't know if you would call Justin Johnson on the 2011 team, he kind of filled a tight end role, but he was more of a receiver in all honesty, where he lined up and stuff. An offense really, despite multiple different philosophies that for many, many years ignored the tight end. So I think, as it's often been with Willie Fritz and Slade Nagel, offensively, we're going to see the tight end featured a fair amount. And like you, I share your excitement for Overmeyer being probably your tight end one going into week 1 next season. My answer is the actual least recent committed player of this group, Anthony Boswell, who was a first team all MAC center for Toledo this past season. We talked last week about how exciting of an ad Shadre Hurst was as a multi-time first team all conference pick coming in as an interior lineman out of Tulane. And I'm just as excited about Boswell, even though he's a bit younger. We always talk about how O-line is the hardest position group to evaluate and hardest to contribute at in your first year or two in college. And you have Boswell here playing in his first real college season after redshirting 2024 at Purdue. No biggie, just the MAC's best center over the course of the season. Yes, the MAC is a lower level of football than the Big 12, but it's still telling that he came in as a redshirt freshman and immediately dominated. And center, in my opinion, is the hardest position to play on the line. Some people argue left tackle. My opinion, it's center. As a young college player, because you're not just snapping the ball every offensive play, but you're responsible for calling out protections. You're really responsible for being the brain of the offensive line unit. And to see a second year college player who had only played in this most recent season do as well as he did at Toledo, I think it'd only be really exciting. The absolute definition of a lower level guy who gets targeted to advance and play at a higher level in his college career. And center was also, going into our last episode, really the only unanswered question on who's going to be your 2026 starter. Mackenzie Agnello played well in the Texas Bowl, had some starting center experience when he was at New Mexico, but now it looks like you have Boswell here. You have Hurst and Agnello as your guards. At tackle, you have your returner, Alvin Ebasele, and then the Miami transfer, Drew Terrell. History would tell you, of course, that having the same starting 5 and O-line healthy for an entire season isn't always easy, but you got to love what the Cougs have done at that position group this offseason.
Yeah, I have to agree. Just in general, I really like getting guys from lower levels that were all conference guys. That usually works out pretty well for most teams.
Well, speaking of that, Bobby, I will run through all the remaining commitments, and you can jump in as you want. Is that good for you?
Yeah, let's do it.
So you have cornerback Javion White out of Tulane, another guy you just described, lower level first team all conference guy, was third team all American conference this past season as a true sophomore. Played actually 8 games and started 2 as a true freshman on John Summerall's first team there in 2024. Had a team high 3 interceptions this season. Feels pretty likely you're going to have him, I think, competing for the other cornerback spot opposite side of Will James. Like I think you got Jalen Mayo in there from SFA as well, who we talked about a little bit last week. Excited about him. Demarion Thomas from Oklahoma State. Didn't play very much at Oklahoma State, redshirted after the Mike Gundy announcement. And I've said this to you. Normally, I'm not wild about guys shutting it down in a season, but I make an exception when it would be your last college season, which if Demarion Thomas had chose to play all the games, that would have been his college career, ending on a 1-11 team that, quite honestly, Demarion Thomas couldn't have done very much about. Started for a good Vandy defense in 2024, started all 13 games, 34 total tackles and a sack. He's that classic plug up the middle, knows. Listed 6'2", 337 pounds. Obviously, we just had a very active guy. I think we were spoiled for how active Carlos Allen was at the position this most recent season. De'Marion Thomas feels like your most obvious Carlos Allen replacement. Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. He's got the right size and he's done it, before.
We had a couple of super seniors I'm going to talk about here as well. Receiver Trent Walker from Oregon State played 5 seasons for the Beavs, is getting a 6th and final season. Despite not being a very good offense, we saw Oregon State this year up close and personal in week 3. Not a very good offense, but I remember Walker having some big catches against us in that one. Finished the year with 823 yards on 68 receptions, had 400 plus yard games. The game against the Cougs, along with Cal, App State, and Tulsa. Don't hate that he had 200 plus yard games against good defenses in the Cougs and Cal, and had 81 receptions 2 seasons ago. Former walk-on. Definitely a guy who's going to be in the starting mix with the next year group with Amari Thomas.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree there. Anytime, that is something you look at when they go to from a lower level is, lower level G5 teams, G6 teams now. Are we
G6? I guess we're calling it G6.
G6. When you look at the G6 level, they're going to play a couple of P5 teams or a really high end G6 teams. So yeah, I definitely like seeing his stats in those games against really, really good teams, especially when you consider he's probably the guy that those defenses are going to focus on, and he can still have those games. Really good sign.
The other senior I alluded to, defensive tackle Ejiro Egedobara out of Yale, played 4 seasons for Yale, missed the most recent season due to an injury and got a medical redshirt. Ivies are also weird about guys playing a graduate year, so I think he had no choice getting his diploma but to take that final season somewhere else. The last season he played in full, 2024, was the first team all Ivy selection. Also, what I noticed, played a fair amount as a true freshman, which is not easy to do when you're an interior lineman on either side of the ball. I think he'll be, if I had to guess, De'Marion Thomas will probably be your first choice, but I would be surprised if he's not a rotation guy in the middle with Thomas, with Khalil Afau, who's another, I think, key returner with that group. And I think you're starting to see Miles Parker also coming back as a reserve interior defensive lineman. I think you've got like 4 guys now for that rotation. I feel like you're pretty good in that group, and I think he'll definitely be playing some snaps next year.
Yep, definitely would agree with that.
If I had to pick a second player that I'm most excited about outside of Anthony Boswell, it's probably be the next guy, Jaden Yates, who most recently played at Ole Miss, linebacker, had 55 tackles, started 9 of the Rebels' 15 games this season, actually had 4 tackles in their recent playoff semifinal loss to Miami. I don't think calling him a starter in the back half of the season would be accurate, but still played a fair amount for the Rebels. Maybe what most excites me, though, is the season before that at Marshall. He had 129 total tackles and 7.5 TFLs for a good Sun Belt defense. Was first team all Sun Belt there under Charles Huff. And unlike a lot of their guys who followed Huff to Southern Miss, Yates had the opportunity to play for a national semifinalist. And while I think it would probably be fair to say he wasn't coming back there in all likelihood to be a starter, I would say more than good enough for the level the Cougars are at, and a guy I would not be surprised at all if he's starting week 1.
Yeah, would definitely agree with that. And I really like the fact that he did start at Marshall and play on a pretty good Marshall defense, and then has the opportunity to go to Ole Miss. And yes, I saw him called starter a lot on social media, and I think that's using the term very liberally there. I would say to have a guy who is a contributor on a national semifinal team is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, if he was coming in purely with his Marshall resume, I'd be excited. And the fact that he got on the field a decent amount for Ole Miss, I think only adds to excitement. You brought in potentially your replacement for Ethan Sanchez at kicker. Evan Noel from Florida was the number 1 place kicker in the country in the 2025 signing class, redshirted this year at Florida. So no college body of work there. And I realize being, the number 1 kicker in the country has a little less cash than the number 1 quarterback. Sorry, Evan Noel. But if anyone's worth a swing on, I think it's a guy who your special teams coordinator, Chris Couch, has seen him before, knows what he's good for. I'm willing to take a swing on the number 1 kicker. Is it a guarantee he works out? No, but you bet on talent.
Yeah, and we saw what a solid kicker can do for this program and this offense. this year. Was Ethan Sanchez perfect? No, we all remember one game in particular. Not to bring up a bad
He was
memory,
damn close,
but
though. He was damn close to be
yeah,
perfect.
but we saw what a weapon can be, and yeah, you take a flyer on talent. It's not like you had somebody else coming in that you were really like, oh man, excited about.
So the remaining three players I mentioned here are all going to be reserves of some degree, though I think one of them, the guy I'm going to mention first, has a chance to play a decent amount. Miller Malone, who comes from Western Kentucky. Cool backstory, by the way. His dad was a late 90s Cougar football alum. You might have seen this already, but his older brother was the Heisman kid at the 2011 Cougar game day.
I did see that.
Which is also college football. Like the Heisman kid is now too old to be a college football player because his younger brother is playing football. I think that was his younger brother. I could be wrong on that. If I'm wrong on that fact, my sincere apologies, but I'm pretty sure it's the younger brother. Anyway, played 2 seasons at Western Kentucky. Got on the field a decent amount this year, 37 tackles, 5 TFLs. He'll definitely be in the 2 deep, and I think play a decent amount of snaps. I may be surprised if he's starting, but I think if the staff thinks he's good enough, Cougar legacy, I'm with it.
Why not?
And you brought in Luke Carney from Syracuse, played a little bit as a true freshman, actually. I think they gave him the maximum amount of games that they could give and still keep his red shirt for, because they obviously didn't get a bowl game. Coming in here as a backup piece, I think we could be honest about that. Though I think if Luke Carney at one point, I don't think I'm exaggerating, Bobby, and saying like CUSA era Houston signs Luke Carney, and
we're losing our minds.
No, I wouldn't say we're losing our minds about it, but we're like, oh yeah, that guy has the potential to be like lower mid 3-star. Oh yeah, he's a potential to be quarterback of the future. They're pretty excited. And now you see the profile and you're like, yeah, he could be a good backup for Keyshawn in a couple of years.
And that's the other thing. If you don't get Keyshawn, I think you're still going, okay, not sure exactly what he sees, but I don't mind him coming in, sitting behind Connor next year and maybe taking over in 27. But now you have the number 1 recruit coming in. I did think this shows me that if Connor goes down for whatever reason with an injury, that I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see Keyshawn play. I think Keyshawn will play enough to save a red shirt, in my opinion. I think that may not be a foregone conclusion, but I think you save the red shirt for him, and you bring in the kid from Syracuse to, if for some reason you need a quarterback for 6 games, you can have one without burning a red shirt. That's just what I think here.
Last factoid about Luke Carney here was the Dave Campbell's Texas football private school quarterback of the year. Shout out Taps football. Any chance we get to shout out Taps football here? We're going to do it. Mentioning really quick, the third and final guy who I think is going to be a reserve, at least in the coming season, Tyson Turner from Texas Tech. Caught a couple of passes, played for them mostly on special teams this season. Good depth option. Was a really good. I noticed this in his profile, was a high-level high jumper in high school, which is not something you always see. So good athlete there. Would be surprised if he does anything more than be the second slot in the 2 deep week 1 or 2.
Absolutely agree. But anytime you can get an athlete, you kind of take that you take that option.
Yeah, and given what Texas Tech is bringing in, it's not any kind of black mark if you're anything but like the highest of high-end recruits that, you didn't get on the field in front of a bunch of guys that Tech paid a lot of money for.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll just quickly mention also, I have to add very much that we did find out that Zion Chris Gramillion would be going to Tulane, which I think will be an interesting landing spot for him. Will Hall, their head coach, has a great history running creative run-first offenses. That's why I was initially really wanting him to come in here as the OC before Fritz hired Slade Nagel. And it's a good level of football where he'll compete for the starting job. And so I'm excited for Zion there. We also found out last night Corey Platt committed to Texas Tech after previously visiting Florida and maybe some other schools. And I would not normally go out of my way to wish luck to a player going to Tech specifically, but considering what Platt went through to get back in the field, I'm still happy for the guy. And also I would say no knock to him if he ends up being your biggest loss from this most recent season's team. You've had a pretty good offseason. Still time for that to change, but you've had a pretty good offseason if that's your biggest loss.
Yeah, I think Corey Platt there, definitely one of those guys that you'd rather see on your roster than on a different roster, but like you said, not that I want anyone who plays at Texas Tech to be overly successful, but if I'm going to have to pick one, Corey Platt's going to be that guy, knowing everything that he kind of went through.
No doubt. And as I mentioned at the top, with the season looming at the end of the current week, we are going to take a look at the 2026 Houston Cougar tennis season to come. The team is going to open with a doubleheader in Southern California on Friday, opening in the morning against UC Riverside and finishing in the afternoon against UC Irvine, with a Sunday afternoon matchup against Loyola Marymount in LA to close this specific road swing. We'll have my thoughts on those opening opponents and just some general schedule thoughts later, but I figured the best place to start would be the roster. Yeah.
Yeah.
What excites me is the Cougs have a good mix of proven vets and newcomers who have shown enough that you could see them being contributors to an improved version of Houston Cougar tennis. And that's kind of the ratio of returners to newcomers that you would want for this program in this specific situation. You obviously don't want to be rebuilding the roster from scratch a year after largely doing that, but you also want to make sure everybody feels like they're pushed to earn their lineup spots. I think helped by the fact that you now have 8 players on the roster as opposed to the 7 you had last year competing for those 6 regular singles and doubles lineup slots. I think worth doing a very quick primer for someone who may not know the basic of tennis and tennis. Someone who may know the basics of like tennis and tennis scoring, but maybe isn't familiar with how a U.S. college match works. The 2 teams in the dual match are playing for 7 possible points. A match will always, or at least almost always, start with 3 doubles matches being played between the teams. The first point of the match is awarded based on which team's pairings won on at least 2 of the 3 courts. So while doubles only represents 1 of your 7 total points, getting out to a 1-0 lead is always nice. And last year's U of H team found out the hard way how challenging it could be when you're not consistently winning that doubles point. But the remaining 6 of 7 are decided on each of the 6 singles matches, how they go between the competitors and the 2 teams. The first team to reach 4 points clinches the match. So once the team hits 4 points before the other team, the match is immediately called, even if there are still multiple singles matches being played. This can lead to some very undramatic matches where a team quickly loses 3 singles courts and goes home losing 4-0. And sometimes incredibly dramatic matches where you have 1 singles court decide the whole match, and you have both teams, players and coaches, fans, if it's a big event, crowded around that court watching how that specific match goes. We kind of had that last year at BYU when I was there in person, when BYU was clinging on to a 3-2 lead late in that one before ultimately triumphing on court 3. We'll also say whenever I mention a player's court, for example, Eva Seppa playing almost entirely on court 2, the lower the number, generally the more skilled the player and challenging the opponents are. There's always some coaching strategy on which player plays which courts, but it's a safe bet that any player who's a court 1 player is a team's most skilled singles player. And that also applies to doubles for court 1 there as well. Bobby, have I given you, someone who's admittedly a slightly less of a tennis head, a good knowledge base to work off of here and say what you were going to say before I cut you off?
Yeah, no, what I was going to say is you are right about watching the matches and the point system. Like you explained it really well, but it can be fun. Like if you win a couple and maybe you lose the doubles point and then you win a match in singles, you win 2, and then you have like 3 matches going on and they're all 3 kind of close and you need to win 2 of the 3 and you're up in 1, you're tied in 1, and then like the other one you're losing. It's kind of like what happens, and then suddenly what's happening on court 5 can flip, and now you're like, wait a minute, okay, now we really got a shot. And the funniest thing to me, if you go to a tennis match, which I highly recommend, because 1, not a lot of people go, and it's great to support anybody who wears Houston across their chest. That's number 1. But the thing I always find funny is when the matches end, they just stand on their court. Like they don't go sit down. Like the players don't go sit down or anything. They just stand on their court and they just watch the match next to them. And then when that match ends, the other match will come join their court. And then they'll be like, okay, let's go over to this one. And so you just slowly see the groups build on the courts. And it's just really funny. It's just kind of one of those funny quirks that happens in a tournament or in a match.
When I was at BYU, it was actually because Valeria Krohotina and Eva Seppa had won their matches. And on that court 3, it was essentially me, Eva, and Valeria, and I think one of the 2 coaches, I can't remember if it was Kat or the assistant, rooting for the Cougar player, and like everyone else there rooting for BYU. But it was fun. It was fun. To the roster that I promised that I would talk about, the Cougs return 5 players from last year's team: seniors Sophie Schouten and Gabby Cortez, along with juniors Lisa Morosova, Valeria Kroatina, and Eva Seppa. The seniors are all competing in their 4th seasons as Cougs, while the trio of juniors will be in their 2nd seasons here after following head coach Kat Adamovich from her previous school, Grand Canyon. I'm going to leave with Schouten because she had one of the most unbelievable year-on-year improvements from where she was 2 seasons ago to where she was as a part of a improved Cougar tennis team. I think, going from being a part of a team actually capable of winning a Big 12 match versus what might have been the worst tennis program since the Big 12 has fielded a team in any season. She was the Cougs. I would say she was admittedly the Cougs' one bright spot 2 seasons ago as part of a doubles pairing, but was just not a good singles player on that team. And not overstating it, she had the best fall season of anyone on the current roster. In singles, she went 8-3. She won her bracket at Big 12 individuals, didn't lose an entire set in that weekend run. Also, Sophie and roster newcomer Shems Dohazagluli advanced to ITA sectionals and had a 9-3 fall record playing doubles. Very much expect Sophie and Shems to open the season playing court 1 doubles for the Cougars, and clearly Sophie's taken a step forward on the singles court just based on last season's performance and the fall performances as well. The only player who had a better spring singles record than Sophie was Valeria Kroatina. She had 5 of the Cougs' 13 total singles wins in Big 12 play. She led the team in both Big 12 wins and overall singles wins. Very no-nonsense player, and there are players out there who, once they get a lead, are great closers, and that's Valeria. But I also got to be there in Provo to see her erase a big deficit. I think she was down as much as 4-1 in the second set before closing out a straight sets win against her opponent. I expect she'll play on one of the top 4 singles courts. And if I had to guess, her and newcomer Petya Drame will be the Cougs court 2 doubles pairing. Eva Seppa, out of the 3 Grand Canyon transfer newcomers, was asked to take on a much tougher job than any of the rest of that trio. And her 3-13 singles record last spring as a sophomore kind of bore that out, though it's worth mentioning in those 3 was a gutsy 3-set win to clinch UH's first ever Big 12 win against Cincy and a straight sets win against one of the better opponents she saw all season in BYU's Gracie Levelston in the regular season finale. And those were both late season matches. So you could see a positive trend line, at least last spring there. I'll be interested to see if she starts the year back at court 2 or starts at a lower court with a more veteran, more proven team around her this season. And Lisa Morosova is the last I will mention of the 3 former Grand Canyon players, sort of by design, not because she is an incredibly valuable player, but she had a pretty injury-filled first season with the Cougars. She missed almost all the fall schedule that season and then suffered a season-ending knee injury early in Big 12 play. Coming off that serious injury, you could see her fall schedule get managed a little bit, but she was back by the start of the first event in Corpus Christi, participated in every event that U of H sent the full team to this fall, and it was a really exciting fall campaign for her. She defeated one of Rice's top returning players at Rice's event early in the fall, advanced to the finals of her bracket at Big 12 individuals. Yeah, she beat opponents from Baylor and Kansas in that run as well. Won a marathon 3-setter, which, man, it's your third fall event back from a major injury, and played, I think, the longest college tennis match I ever saw when she beat Ben Ezedine from Kansas in the semifinals. Didn't play much doubles in the fall, but did win both the matches she played with Petya Drame at Rice. So maybe that's a doubles pairing to watch in the spring. And she was just kind of saved for the tournaments just for load management. She was good in spots also when she played with now Cougar grad assistant Santa Strombaja last season. So I'll be curious if she focuses on singles, but I believe she'll be a top 3 court player for the Cougs. Last but not least, Gabby Cortez, I think, is the player I have the least clear idea on what exactly her role is going to be in 2026. But in the fall, she won multiple matches at the ITA Texas Regional. I thought it was really cool. She was down. She lost 6-0 in her first set against SMU's Carolina McGinley and came back to win that one. And I think won her way. No, I think she won one after that to get to the main draw. But as part of her run to get to the main draw, that was a big thing also. The Cougs were the first time in team history, all 7 of their singles players made the main draw at the ITA Texas Regional. So that was cool. Also won multiple matches at the Islander Open and Big 12 individuals event. So I think she'll compete for a spot there as well. She mostly plays a double specialist. Last season will be curious to see what her role is in the coming season. Bobby, I've talked a lot. Do you want to add on to anything I said there?
No, I think you have more than covered and know a lot more than I do, but I definitely think that Gabby, when I go to the events, is very vocal, and you can definitely tell when things are going well for her. I wouldn't be surprised if, like you said, she's kind of a double specialist. That's something I kind of noticed too, even though she did have that good fall, like you mentioned. I wouldn't be surprised if you see her really on the doubles court and really taking a team leadership through, how she is when she's at the tournaments, not necessarily a leadership in terms of on the court, but I would be shocked if she wasn't in a doubles pairing that played in every match, almost so they can bring her to the events. You know what I mean?
I was so at that BYU match I referenced earlier, I was mostly on court 3 because the court Gabby was playing on, it was one of those ones that was a pain to get to. Like I think you could only see it, but from across another court if you went to like the back courts there. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna go to the one where I can actually sit near it and have a good view of the action. But I was trying to gauge how it was going by how many let's go, how many let's goes I heard. And they were starting to pick up late, though. Unfortunately, BYU clinched the match before her match went final. There, yeah, great intensity. Just one of my favorite Cougs in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll get to the 3 newcomers here. I'll mention the most veteran of the 3 first. Shems Doha-Zaglulu, who I mentioned a bit ago, originally from Paris, France, not Texas, Bobby, who played the 3 seasons before this one for the South Alabama program, playing her senior season for the Cougs. In that most recent spring season, Shems was 11-1 for the Jaguars, playing mostly in court 3. Was a game away from winning her singles match against league power Marshall before that overall match was called. 2 seasons before that, as a freshman, she had a really impressive 16-2 spring singles record. Mentioned it earlier, she had a really strong fall playing doubles with Sophie Shout and got some impressive singles wins too during the fall, taking down opponents from Rice, A&M, at Baylor at different points. Should certainly be in a singles lineup regular, along with being part of the top doubles pairing with Shout. And if I had to guess, it'll be on one of the top 3 courts, but I'm not as sure about that. You also have Petia Drame, your other 4-year college transfer, coming in originally from Slovenia, but joins the Cougs directly from playing 2 seasons for mid-major tennis power FIU, excuse me, not FAU, though FAU I think was good last season. FIU, though, the Panthers, was part of a CUSA champion / NCAA tournament qualifying team both of those seasons. She mostly played on courts 5 and 6. Those seasons had a combined 17-11 singles record. That Drame was good enough to play for FIU, a program that's been way, way, way ahead of the Cougs in recent years, is a good endorsement. And she certainly, I think, looking at hers, because I was able to type out the fall results for all the players and kind of just scan through who played who, what was everyone's record, and doing my prep for this episode. She had, I think, by luck or whatever, fall tournament machinations, the toughest run of opponents, but still out of that had standout wins over players from A&M and mid-major power SFA as well. The wild card of this entire roster, the one player of the 8 I've not talked about here is Alexia Lavinia Pujac. She comes over after playing mostly lower-level professional tennis, largely in the ITF circuit, which, if you want to know, is one level below the main men's and women's tournaments, the ATP and WTA, respectively. She was the number 7 player in the ITF circuit when she announced her signing with the Cougars during the fall. Pujac also represented Romania nationally at the junior level. A lot of unknowns, the player who hasn't played any U.S. college tennis before, obviously, but she is definitely the equivalent of a big-time recruit and one who I expect will play a notable role with the Issues team. A really exciting ad going into the spring semester.
Yeah, I think that one, when we signed her, you seemed very excited about it, and so that got me very excited about it. So it should be exciting to see somebody who has played at a very high level like that coming into the program.
She played a lot of clay court over there because clay courts are a lot more common in Europe, low-level tennis. Like, there are some clay courts in America, but you have to be like, go to River Oaks Country Club or something like that to get them here. Shout out U.S. Clay Court Championships at River Oaks Country Club. I'll be curious if going full-time to hard court is any kind of adjustment for her, but I know a level of recruit that the staff was very, very excited to bring in here, and one I'll be surprised if isn't involved in the lineup from match 1. Cougs will start their season with 9 non-conference matches in a row. They'll have a 10th one occurring later, sandwiched in the middle of Big 12 play. 3 coming this week in California that I mentioned at the top. The matches at UC Riverside and Irvine on Friday and Loyola Marymount Sunday. UCR is an ideal opponent to open the season, Bobby. They were winless in Big West Conference play last season. UCI was only better by virtue of beating that UCR team last spring. That was their one Big West win. Though I will say UCI was much more competitive generally than UCR, and make it the benefit of also playing their first match of the day, whereas the Cougs will be playing their second when they see each other. Sunday's opponent, Loyola Marymount, was a good deal better than those previous two opponents, but has to replace their best singles player by a wide margin from last spring, though they do return Anastasia Bazova, who was second team all WCC a season ago. 3-0 is entirely doable from this opening weekend road trip. The only other non-conference notables I'll mention here are UNT 2 Fridays from now and hosting SFA to close the main non-conference slate on Valentine's Day. UNT was one of the teams the Cougars beat in non-conference last season, but they returned a lot of key singles players from that team: Stefani Informe, Carolina Leidner, Lily Schultz, and Lou Shallard, in addition to just having a much better record on their home courts in Denton last season, which is where the Cougs will be playing them this spring. And SFA is the other one I'll mention, a 2025 NCAA tournament team, the only current season non-conference opponent who made last year's tournament, who, despite losing their head coach to Bradley, basically returned the core of last year's squad intact, including top singles players Felicia Bach and Ksenia Mamantova, and the top doubles pairing of Gemma Cave and Anna Paula Chavez, who Petya Drame actually beat, I believe, at ITA Texas Regionals. I'll save my full Big 12 thoughts for when we actually know what these Big 12 teams look like, but I'll give you the 3 buckets I have each Big 12 opponent in based on my rough preseason expectations, if you'll allow me, Bobby.
Yeah, please.
These should win ones are Utah, Colorado, K-State, Cincy, and West Virginia. Do I think it's a lock you'll win all 5? No, but I think if you are to show meaningful progress this season, you should win the majority, at least 4 or 5 of these ones. A couple stretch goals to win, but I think could be winnable for the Cougars. BYU at home. BYU is a team the Cougs actually played very close, which wasn't common on the road for this team last season. And we'll be getting them in Houston, where notably BYU was a lot worse last year. Iowa State, who I wish the Cougars were getting at home, I think would be winnable at home, but I think they'll be a bit more of a tough customer in Ames. I think it's going to be a little tougher. They had a really young roster last year, but were, I think, one of the most overachieving teams in the conference. And then the ones that'll be very difficult to win: UCF, Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, the 2 Arizona schools, and probably Kansas. Not all those are top 25, but I would say at least 4 of those teams I just listed are just better programs than you right now, programs that invest a lot more than tennis, and programs that, at least at this point in the build, I'm not sure you expect to win those.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying there. I think, just a side note, just to kind of get excited for tennis, if you didn't watch like their preseason warm up first day of practice video with the mat that says "no longer the Big 12 doormat" or something that it said,
Yeah.
dude, I saw that and I got fired up. I was like, let's go! Like, that is the mentality that I hope women's basketball has. That's the mentality that I am pretty sure soccer had and showed this year. Like, that is the mentality that I hope softball has, right? Like, it just, something about it just really fired me up when I saw it. Just, that's the mindset. You're getting a team of just women who want to just go out there and just absolutely kill. You can see they are going to take no prisoners if they can.
It's definitely coming from the top. You talk to Kat for 5 minutes,
Yes.
and
Oh,
you
yeah.
know it's definitely coming from the top too. Like, they have the right mentality there. Yeah, it's really excited for this season. Like, I think NCAA tournament would be like ambitious, that level of thing, but no longer the doormat of the Big 12. Not just not ambitious. I think the expectation inside the program for this year's team, and one I think they'll reach. It certainly doesn't. I do think the schedule is set up very well. It's a pretty manageable non-conference. Like, UNT and SFA are both good tests. There's probably a couple other good teams that I think will give the Cougars a good test, but unlike last season where you played a pretty difficult non-conference, you had some of the more manageable games get moved or canceled. You're going to go on the road. You're going to experience a road win, probably at least in 2 of the 3 games in California, probably all 3. So you're getting the right mentality for winning on the road. I mean, and that was my last note on the schedule, is that, man, I really wish Cincy and West Virginia were at home. Like, those are the 2 bottom teams in the Big 12 standings. The ones that I should think the Cougars should win, even at a road venue. But Would have liked those to be in Houston. I would have been, I think, even more ambitious about the wins total if those were occurring in Houston. But a team worth being excited for, and a team I'm excited to watch in person in just under 3 days and talk about here periodically over the course of the season.
Yeah, it should be an exciting season.
Yeah, out to the weather, it's like low 70s and sunny the entire time.
When are you leaving for the trip?
The crack of dawn on Friday, buddy, because it's
Nice.
it's a 9 a.m. Pacific start. Which,
Okay.
I mean, it's Vegas to Riverside's not a crazy drive, and I'm going to be on the road before most serious traffic, so I'm going to get
Nice.
there, head back early on Saturday. Significant other's birthday. Wish I could have made the Loyola Marymount game in LA. Even had designs on playing paddle somewhere in LA or OC, but life interferes. And in this case, I'm not too mad at life interference. I'm going to see the Cougars in Arizona in March. I'm going to see them hopefully a few times in Houston as well. So excited to see them on Friday and get some California sunshine.
Heck yeah, man.
So at this point, we are completely done with the Houston Cougar talk. I'm not ending this episode. This is not me about to throw to Bobby to end it. I am currently at 11:36 p.m. Central Time on January 13th, paying back my punishment for losing the second year in a row of our season head-to-head pick'em series down with the Pickness. And Bobby's punishment, which he laid out to me.
For anyone who was trying to remember what the punishment was,
yes.
I will set it up real quick. I was in a golf store, and there was a song that played, and I remember texting Sam, buddy, I think I just heard the worst song of all time. And then I was like, is it really that bad? And for some reason I went and I listened to it, because like maybe I was just hearing like a part of it.
Did you listen to the album or the song? Just the song?
The song.
Okay,
just the song.
Okay.
And I was like, maybe that song wasn't as bad as it like sounded at the golf store or was something like that. And the song was Truck Bed by an artist named Hardy. And I got about 45 seconds through the song and I was like, nope, just as bad as I thought it was. And so Sam's punishment, if he lost, and I got to be honest, I think I may have gone too far with this one.
Yeah, you understood the assignment correctly.
Was that he had to, you may remember last year, he had to listen to the pop album by NSYNC as his punishment. And I said, why don't we take that to the next level? So Sam had to listen to Hardy's 2023 album that was called The Mockingbird and the Crow. And he has to give us his analysis of it as if he were kind of a Billboard reviewer. So, Sam, I give it to you, my guy.
You mentioned it. Unlike the previous artist that I had to do one of these punishment albums on and sync, I knew nothing of Hardy and was probably happier knowing nothing of Hardy. From what I've gathered on his Wikipedia, by the way, Hardy is all caps. Like if you're using proper Hardy, what's the word, style? The Hardy style guide is all caps and multicolored baseball caps for some reason, sartorially as well. From what I've gathered on his Wikipedia, he's a Nashville country music guy around our age, older millennial, who is written for other slop country acts like Florida Georgia Line and Morgan Wallen. And country is not my favorite genre, but I don't have a blanket problem with country. Bobby can attest. There are country songs I think are very good, even mainstream hits like Callin' Baton Rouge by Garth Brooks, Whiskey for My Men, Beer for My Horses by Toby Keith, How Do You Like Me Now by Toby Keith as well. That's an absolute banger. At least a couple.
Really, it's just the Toby Keith thing.
No, he's got some bangers, man. He's got some bangers. At least a couple of Luke Combs songs, some less mainstream country in there. My point there is I'm not somebody who has a genre-specific problem with country. And Bobby, I picked this little nugget up from Hardy's Wikipedia as well. He released a single called Quit about how somebody apparently in real life put a note that said quit in his tip jar early in his music, and I'm using heavy air quotes, career here. And Bobby, let me say candidly that when I was done with this album and it's 17 tracks, I wish he had taken that person who left the note up on their advice. As you mentioned, this album was released in 2023, apparently peaked at number 23 on the Billboard Hot 100, which shouldn't restore anyone's faith in humanity. I'm gonna go track by track here. I would love to filibuster and just be like, have this be going on at 12:20 your time. But quite frankly, by that point, I'm going to be wanting to go to sleep. I am an old man out here, even a couple times on Westview as well. So I won't go that long, but we're going track by track here. The first track is called all lowercase beer. Suspiciously little about the actual beverage in this track. The chorus has a line that says sincerely beer, and it's not clear whether it's being told from the perspective of a sentient beer or that the guy is positively addressing beer. I'm not going to edit that out. I'm not going to edit anything out from this. Certainly, this track was a glimpse into what I had to come in the remaining 16 tracks. The next one was Red, all lowercase here, Red, featuring Morgan Wallen.
Oh, like Taylor Swift.
Yeah, like Taylor Swift, sure. An actual line from the song is, I shit you not, I ain't talking politics, I'm talking small towns. They also mentioned in the first minute or so the Book of John, a barn door, and a hot, dry summer. It's a really impressive use of tired Nashville mass-produced country cliches in a really short amount of time. This album,
I gotta say, hot, dry summer when he writes in places that have humidity, like a lot. Florida.
Yeah, but you don't know shit about dry summer. This album was produced before generative AI was capable of producing even this bad country song. But if I didn't know anything about this, if you had just played this to me and told me that this was ChatGPT's new country accent skin with a prompt to make a Nashville-style country song, and it produced this song, lyrics, and melody, I would be a little surprised. And this song, I'm not exaggerating, I hate it more than anything you subjected me to when I reviewed the NSYNC album. And it just pit in my stomach, and it's just like, oh, I got 15 more tracks of this. Fuck. And the next one was Wait in the Truck, all lowercase, featuring Lainey Wilson. And I had brief hopes for this track because Lainey Wilson is in at least one song I kind of like, but she's barely involved in this song. Like, she joins in the chorus, but she's given essentially no chance to do her own thing. And I actually think if she was the main singer, the song wouldn't be half bad in terms of lyrics and melody. The end is supposed to sound cathartic, but the music is so overproduced, it's kind of hard to feel the emotion because of all the polish on it, you know?
Yeah.
The next one was called Drink One For Me. Real blah, blah, blah. Remember me by listening to Leonard Skinner and drinking beer kind of song. I think the story was written from the perspective of a guy who died and wants his friends to drink one for me. At least 80% of the lyrics are some country music cliche. It's very dense, and there are some dense country cliche songs in here, but this is up there. The next one's called I in Country, all lowercase. I'm not pulling a joke. It's called I in Country. There's a line in it that says, I ain't never seen a pickup without a shotgun seat. Okay, buddy. And this is another line. This is actually the chorus, or it's in the chorus that upsets me so fucking much. You ready? There ain't no I in country, but there's a Y-O-U. No women, no matter how attractive the man, or no man, or I guess women, being between women, whatever, is going to be swayed by that pickup line, hypothetical or real. The next one is called Screen, all lowercase. This is vaguely kind of an anti the way things are now, which I guess means the title of the song refers to cell phones and computer screens. And while I would never defend our modern lives as various screen addictions, I think Mr. Hardy, all caps, should be grateful he exists in this current, specifically talentless millennial Gen Z era of country. Like, you should be happy that he's in these screens era and not the like shit kicking outlaw country era, because I think he would have gotten punched in the face in that one. And I don't have anything personally against this man, but I'm sorry, nobody from 1970s country would identify this guy as a fellow troubadour, if that makes sense. And I'm not seeming like I'm too harsh on this man.
No, I get where you're coming from.
The next song is called Happy, and I genuinely could not tell you one memorable thing from the song, and I tried to create a bullet point, and it's nothing. Just fluff. It was just there. The next one, some of these songs made me pretty mad at this point, so it's saying a lot here. This next song, all lowercase, is Here Lies Country Music. The audacity of this man to write a song eulogizing country music when this album is the specific kind of paint by numbers, produced by a Nashville corporate boardroom, totally forgettable, formulaic country music that anyone who truly loves this genre at best tolerates and at worst loathes is sure something. This genre used to be guys who lived on the margins of respectable society, or at least sang about it, or at least could relate to it. And you could take one guess whether Hardy is that kind of guy or whether he's some guy who went to school specifically to work in the country music industry. Bobby, I bet you won't need more than one guess to figure out which one Hardy, sorry to give his all caps name, the proper emphasis is.
Yeah, it's going to be the second one, but
it is going to be the second one. You're correct. The next track is all lowercase, The Mockingbird, and capitals, The Crow. I think I figured out the conceit of this album is that it's roughly half country, the first half, the songs I've talked about at this point, and the back half is rock. And I guess this is the track where the split happens, though I will note if that was your goal, maybe don't pick an odd number of tracks to do kind of a half and half thing. You are trying to divide a thing that specifically cannot be divided here, even if you're trying to do a half splitsies on a song. One of the early lines is, I'm not kidding, I know it sounds cliched. Hardy, pal, if you only knew the amount of cliches I'd already sifted through to this point. And about halfway through the song, it goes kind of rock, definite Nickelback vibes, but I honestly wouldn't insult Nickelback, a band I generally don't like very much, by drawing out the comparison further. The rock part is essentially just about how he can truly be himself now, which, again, is an incredible premise when you've been basically a Nashville insider your entire career. The next track is Sold Out, all caps. Sorry for the loud thing there. It starts with the sound of a crowd chanting his name. Gotta be fake, man. No crowd has ever chanted Hardy like that at a concert. No one's ever been that jazzed for a Hardy concert, Billboard appearance, otherwise. That's the first full rock track. And there's a line in it that says, not to repeat a line I just said a bit ago, it says, keep your in crowd. I'll be the outcast. You're an industry songwriter who got a music career out of being an industry songwriter, buddy. Fuck off. Nothing evil based on getting a career about that, but doing a song about not being a sellout feels like a bit much, you know?
Yeah, no. You know who sings about not being a sellout?
Sellouts.
Sellouts.
Bingo. The next song is called Jack. I'm not going to yell anymore. I think I've yelled enough here. My throat's already feeling it, buddy. It's called Jack, all caps. I think the song is about Jack Daniels and having the same issue I had with the track Beer earlier. I can't tell if it's from the perspective of a sentient Jack Daniels bottle or a guy singing to Jack or about Jack. Disturbing thoughts, but not as disturbing as listening to the song. The only redeeming thing about it, under 3 minutes, and a decent amount of the tracks in the back half were under 3 minutes, which I appreciate the suffering being limited there. Here we go. Truck Bed. The song that caused this, the song you overheard at the golf shop that made you want to pick this album as my punishment. And I gotta say, 30 seconds in, I understood now. I was like, oh, that's why you picked this. Not having listened to the other 16 tracks of The Mockingbird and The Crow, you can actually contribute on this one. I woke up, this is the line from the song. I woke up on the wrong side of the truck bed this morning. Okay, buddy. Okay. I mean, the song has that super produced kind of hip hop beat that you hear in this specific kind of like almost like, oh yeah, you hear that beat and you think, oh yeah, Tim McGraw's about to rap with Nelly or 2 Chainz or some other guy with the track badly. You know what I mean? Like that has kind of the backing on that.
Yes.
And there's a line that he says, you could say I got what I deserved. No, sir. You will never get what you deserve for what listening to this album. And this song specifically did to me. I think this is, and there's heavy competition. There's been songs that you've heard me talk a lot about how much I disliked, but this was the absolute worst. I want that 3 minutes of my life back. I did not give this. I didn't give anything a second listen here, but there's not been anything that I'm going to not listen to a second time as much as Truck Bed by Hardy.
So there's, this was the line that I bailed on when I tried to go back to see if it was good. She said, don't come home if you go to the bar. I said, okay, baby. Then got drunk out in the yard. Technically, he's not wrong. Technically, he didn't break the rules.
The next song is 30-06. It's the gun way of writing it out. He didn't do it phonetically. He did the .30/06.
Yeah.
This probably wouldn't meet any legal requirements for this, but he blatantly rips off the general opening riff to the Green Day classic Insomnia, the one that has the kind of I'm having trouble trying to. Yeah, I'm not gonna butcher Billy Joe Armstrong's good song any more than that.
And get us delisted on
right?
YouTube for
hey, under 10 seconds, I'm good. And again, I don't think this meets any. I'm not trying to get the Green Day legal people to do. I think he did enough different, but I'm just like, you're not slick, buddy. I see what you're doing, Hardy. The rest of the song is just a sub 3 minute, super forgettable song about a woman taking a 30-06 and fills the quota of a country song on this album referencing a gun. I guess a rock country song referencing a gun. We've gotten trucks, we've gotten how things used to be, we've gotten beer, we've gotten Jack Daniels, we've gotten women problems. Basically, all the generic new country song titles just checked off here, Bobby. The next one is I Ain't in the Country No More, all caps. This is the closest thing to a semi-authentic sounding rock song, but that's not an endorsement. This song also isn't any good, and I had no other real memorable thoughts about it. The next one features Jeremy McKinnon from A Day to Remember. It's called Radio Song, all caps. I don't know if this, I think Truck Bed is a worse song, but this one may have made me the maddest. It's basically about a guy who is tired of writing cliched country and kind of making fun of that, and I'm sorry, man. You're the person who's right. You're the problem here.
The call is coming from inside the house.
The call is coming from inside the house. You've made a nice living off of it, including, but not limited to, giving you the inside track to becoming a recording artist in your own right. The chorus has kind of a screamo thing to it, and McKinnon being from a Day to Remember kind of, I guess it fits there, but also like A Day to Remember, I don't like it. And certainly A Day to Remember and Hardy coming together did not create a song I liked. 2 more tracks, Bobby. We're almost at the end here. Finishing strong. You have, he censors it, but it's essentially Kill Shit Till I Die. And believe it or not, and I think I've got a little blue here when we've gotten off the Cougar topics. I've made it a personal goal this year, Bobby, to use profanity less. But I don't get doing it, like censoring the title and then saying the words uncensored in the actual chorus. Like, what are you doing here? I think the song is about prepping for the end of the world. Very unclear. For the most part, his songs, you can sort of, okay, like he's talking about trucks. He's talking about drinking. He's talking about this. And also, he attempts to rhyme NASDAQ and country ass in the song's chorus multiple times because it's a chorus. So you hear it multiple times going on. Last but not least, when I saw the title of the last song of the album, I said out loud in my office, so I kind of listened to it as I did the back half of my work day. I said out loud, "Are you kidding me?" Because it's called, in all caps, The Redneck Song. And the name The Redneck Song conjures up an idea of a super cliched song, something he complained about earlier in the album that somehow doesn't even give you an idea of how cliched it's going to be. Here's a line from the chorus. Bisquick on my cast iron, dip spit on my collar. I just want to say, Bobby, you truly did something evil making me listen to this piece of garbage album, and yet you understood the postseason punishment assignment extremely well, so kudos to you there, and I am now done talking about Hardy's 2023 album, The Mockingbird and The Crow.
Dude, as you told me you were finally listening to it, I think you sent me probably 6 messages going, what the hell, man? This is awful. You were telling other people about it?
I told my significant other.
Yeah,
I sent a picture of the album, and it was like, oh, it looks terrible. I'm like, if you only had a clue.
Yeah, man. I felt a little bad about it. Like, I mentioned Mike Brown in the bowl memory of him having to wear the shirt. I felt like after you got the truck bed, I should have been like, all right, man, you did enough.
I mean, look, if you're going to make me listen to it, I would be like, don't make me listen to like 6 tracks to this album. Again, I didn't enjoy this, and I think I've made it clear, never, ever, 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 ever listen to anything that Hardy makes musically ever again. It made me mad. I sent a screenshot. I went to my Apple Music to start playing music before I went to paddle earlier today, and the Hardy and the Crow is obviously it's the most recent thing because I was listening to it like a couple hours earlier at work, and it just made me mad even seeing that. Like I am probably, Bobby, gonna get at least some part of my like one of those like your suggested playlist for the week is going to be affected by this because I listened to 17 tracks of. I should have gone into my Spotify account and done it there since I no longer use it, but mistake already made. Cost. I'd do that. I should have done that to avoid having this on my listening history. But here we are. Good punishment, buddy. I don't think we need to do the full. It's 2 hours in. It's almost midnight.
It's 2 hours in. You guys know where to find us.
shpodcast@gmail.com. Podcast.bsky.social on Blue Sky, at @shpodcast on the website, formerly known as Twitter, that we still call Twitter. patreon.com/SH podcast. If you like what you do and want to support that we do here as the internet's longest Houston Cougar podcast on a weekly basis, patreon.com/SH podcast. You people that listened all the way 2 hours to the end are absolutely wonderful folks. We hope you enjoyed the Cougar talk and maybe a little bit me being very angry about a country album Bobby listened to. And Bobby, what do we always say at the end here, pal?
Go Coogs.
All right. Go Coogs. Let's go.